that at my age I would know how to do like PowerPoint shit. Like I look like Barbara from HR, but I'm clueless, okay? So this is it. That's what you get. That's me and my sister when we were kids, okay? And we're wearing corsages, which you can't tell, but they look like they were stolen from a funeral home. I don't know. All right. We're talking about a very, very, very favorite subject of mine. Are you ready? We're going to talk about the Beatles. I'm that old. Okay, so my childhood was not exactly like moonbeams and tulips. It was a fucking shit show. So we were really broke and we were really a mess. And my first memory is living in an apartment that was so small that my sister and I shared a room. It wasn't really a room, it was the dinette in the kitchen. Do you know what that is? That's like that little alcove, which would be fine if we like were into food when we were little. But the problem was, we weren't, but my mother was. She was she was a portly woman. She said she was big boned. She was huge. And so every night we would like try to sleep. We slept in one bed in this tiny little space. We were such a mess. And my mother would like sidle in, like thinking we didn't see her. And then we were supposed to be sleeping and she would open up the refrigerator and the light would wake us up. And then she'd open the freezer, and so the first thing I would see is this woman, my mother, in her house coat, and she would be like digging in a Van Chalk straw, like Briars in the gallon, like a ladle, not even a spoon. Okay, so this is, okay. But luckily, by the time we were 8, we moved to a normal apartment a block away in Queens, in Forest Hills, which seems nice, but we were like the poor people on Yellowstone Boulevard in a building that was fine, but we were so poor. We lived in a ground floor apartment, and the reason I think we could afford it was because the boiler, I think, was inside our apartment, heating the entire building. So it was so fucking hot in there all the time. It's like the Titanic, that coal room where you see those guys. It was like that all the time. Okay, so that was my childhood. Now, my sister and I used to hide in our bedroom because my parents hated each other. They hated each other, they threatened each other to leave each other for so many years. They stayed married till they died. 52 years. They stayed together, they hated each other. Okay, so but when we were really little, we just used to hide. We were like taking cover. And we would play crazy games like, did you guys ever play Hot Lava? Do you know that game? You get on the bed and the shag carpeting is the magma and you jump from one to the other. We could occupy ourselves. We did not want to be around our parents because they were always fighting over the one thing they didn't have, money. And my dad, who had a job working in a crayon factory, and it wasn't Crayola, it was an imitation Crayola. So can you imagine growing up using crayons that were like Hanukkah candles, like waxy but no color, and not knowing that like there was burnt sienna was a thing? Like I didn't know any of that. It was a disaster, but you know we did it. Okay, so we would stay together, and my father was always losing jobs, even at the crayon factory. It was a mess. And my sister and I we had each other. Now, one of the problems was mealtime because my mother, it was fucking hot in there. I get it. She's big bone, big woman. She decided to spend all of her time, just like the elephant in the room, in just her brassiere and her underpants. Now, I'm not talking a bra. Do you know the difference between a bra and a brassiere is like 32 eyes and hooks, and she had like cleavage that starts here and went all the way down, and big lady pants, and she was always sweating on her mustache. She was a mess. And my father had on like a dirty t-shirt, and they're yelling at each other. And it was not fun to eat meals with these people because when you're a Jew growing up in Queens back then, especially if you're poor, it's not like we went to charm school. So like you talk and you spit food while you're talking because you can't waste time. You're eating and talking at the same time. And my mother would make this meatloaf with Campbell's vegetarian soup that had alphabet letters in it. I don't know if you've ever... Okay. Now, the problem was because my mother was busy talking and spitting and yelling at my father, like the letters would land on her continental shelf and her sweat. It was bad. So my sister and I used to say, Mom, can we eat in our bedroom? Because the one thing my parents gave us was our own television. Now, I think my father probably found it on the back of somebody's truck. I don't know, because we had no money for TVs, but that was the heart of our home, was our black and white small TV. No TVs in our house had, like, we certainly didn't have remotes back then. I mean, I'm fucking old. We had like a dial, but because we were the Handelman family, we didn't have a dial. We lost it. So you used pliers to change the channel. It wasn't a big deal. We only had 2, 4, 5, 7. That was it. It wasn't like you had cable. So we put tinfoil on the antenna for HD quality. And we would sit there and we'd watch a show. And my sister and I would spend all of our time in our room watching I Dream of Jeannie, which I loved. We used to like go like this thinking we could wind up in Cocoa Beach or wherever the fuck they were. Like we would do anything to just get out of this house. And my parents didn't care because they were so busy fighting in the kitchen, they didn't want us to hear it. So it was fine. Snack tables, we'd watch TV, except one night of the week. Every week. It was like our Shabbat dinner, but we called it Shanat because it was Sunday night. Sunday night, our high holy night, we spent in my parents' bedroom and we would watch the Ed Sullivan Show. Okay, now if you all are too fucking young. Okay, let me tell you. Ed Sullivan was this. It was insane that he had his own show. He was not someone you'd think that anyone would want on television. He looked like a Munch painting that was like dripping like the screen. Like he had like a long head, and he was very uncomfortable in his own bones. So like when you'd watch him, he was always like kind of wandering around the stage. But everybody loved him, and it was a true variety show. Way before, like, when you have to compete to be, like, the best of whatever. This was, like, true, just simple variety. And he would have amazing acts, and everybody watched it. I mean, obviously, we didn't have a lot of options. We didn't exactly have Netflix. But everybody loved watching Ed Sullivan. So he would have, like, these people that had sticks, and they would twirl plates. Why does anybody want to do that? I don't know. But we were, like, mesmerized by the plate twirlers, and I think he invented the stupid pet tricks, like dogs, like jumping through hoops, which I think is kind of poignant because David Letterman took over that theater many, many years later with his and I'm thinking he definitely stole that from Ed Sullivan. And then they had this thing, do you guys remember? You don't remember, what am I talking about? Right. Ask your parents. There was this little animal they called Topo Gigio. It was a mouse dressed as a gondolier. Why? I don't know. But we bought it. We thought Topo Gigio was a gondolier. He had like a little tam and a striped shirt. And every time the show was on, he'd say, Eddie, kiss me goodbye. And we'd all, I don't know, how stupid. We were stupid. We were definitely stupid. We were like totally into this shit. Okay, so Sunday night is Ed Sullivan. Now, no matter what went on during the week, and it was all bad, it was bad, there was Sunday night. And my family said, we're going to have a real dinner. We're going to be together. We're going to watch Ed Sullivan. Great. Okay, dinner. It was on my parents' bed. It was a pizza, a greasy pepperoni pizza. The Jews are having their pepperoni pizza on the bed. Okay, it's like oily, greasy mess. My sister and I were sitting on the bed with my parents. My mother's in her shitty bra. My father's in his dirty t-shirt, thinking like he looks like Marlon Brando on the wall. He doesn't look like Marlon Brando. He just looks disgusting. But then Ed Sullivan comes on and all of our worries go away. Thinking about Monday morning school, knowing that I did not study for any of those tests, knowing that I didn't do my homework, knowing that those bitchy chicks in school who hate me, cunts, every one of them, they're going to beat the shit out of me. I didn't think about any of it because it was Ed Sullivan. Now, my mother had one trait that was great. She was totally into music. I mean, I was like the only 8-year-old who had Ray Charles and Chubby Checker on 45s, okay? Because my mother, she was like, this is what you should be listening to. And she said, you're going to see something that's unbelievable. You're going to watch the Beatles. It's their first time on Ed Sullivan. Now, I think history tells that that wasn't their first appearance. They were on a different show. My mother used to talk about this guy, Jack Paar, who was another host who lost his job because he gave somebody the finger. Who knows? I don't know. But Ed Sullivan's the first time I got to witness the Beatles, and we were all so excited. And there we all sat on the bed. We're so excited, and we know they're going to be great. And I'm looking, and I'm 8, I'm a literal thinker, and I see all these girls in the audience. They're swooning, they're pulling their hair out, they're passing out, they're screaming their lungs out. And I mean, if I had known about like toxic, like chemicals or an atomic bomb when I was 8, I would think there was something really bad happening. But no, it was the Beatles. They were flipping the fuck out out over the Beatles, and we just sat there transfixed by these 4 dudes who walked on the stage after Ed Sullivan introduced them, and he's like, "Oh, the Beatles," and they came out. They were wearing black suits, like shiny suits, tight pants, thin ties. Now their hair, my mother said, was so long at the time, it was like a bowl cut. I mean, if you look at it now, they just look like one of the Three Stooges. They didn't really look like anything, but back then it was like an unbelievable thing to see that. And they were watching them, and they're singing like "I Want to Hold Your Hand" and all these other amazing original first generation Beatles songs. And at that, I'm watching my parents and my sister, and we're all loving it. We're singing along to the chorus. We're totally into it. It's like this fucking family who's so fucked up, who has really very little prospects. In this one moment, watching the Beatles, it's like the only other time I can actually remember this kind of experience happening was when we were all watching the moon landing, and then the horrible experience of seeing John Kennedy's after his funeral, like watching like those are the memories I have with my parents. But this one time, in this one moment, this fucked up family is watching this together, and all I can think about is the Beatles was going to save us. Thank you.